Hi, I'm Tricia at Club Scrap. Welcome to the Soaring Eagle Card Workshop. We're going to have a lot of fun bringing our crafting to new heights today. Whether you picked up this kit in advance or not, don't worry about it. Just come and follow along with me. Watch how these cards are made, and I'm sure that you'll be able to master this technique as well. We do have a craft along kit for you to make this card exactly as you see, plus 3 additional cards in this unique structure. You'll master that technique and then be able to make more of them on your own. So let's get started with our trimming, scoring, and then final assembly. Follow along. All good projects from Club Scrap tend to begin with some trimming, and then if you're making cards, usually we will go to the scoring. And the neat part is I've made trimming maps for you to follow along with so that you are maximizing the paper availability for your cards, doing it in the most efficient way possible and in cooperation with the grain direction of your paper and so on. So let's just dive in. I'm going to set aside the cut aparts. Those will be the last thing we trim. And then this darker brown paper that's included in the kit, we're going to set that aside, and we're left with 4 colors here. This is from our Wanderer collection. We've got an orange, a navy blue, a light blue, and a craft. All 4 papers will be trimmed the exact same way. So you really don't have to worry about which one we're working with. If you want to go with me, feel free. So I'm going to be choosing my orange paper first. And of course, this card will, this paper will eventually be folded, and I don't want to fold against the grain. So let's find out the grain direction of our paper. And to do that, I always just hold it by an edge and kind of study what the paper does. Is it droopy or is it stiff when I hold it by the edge? Then compare to the neighboring edge. That's a lot more stiff, isn't it? Do you see how it just sits like a pancake? Whereas this drips down like the batter, okay? Now, I'm gonna rotate this paper so that when I'm holding it and it's dipping, it dips most easily from the top of the trimmer base to the bottom. And you can verify if the grain direction matters, like in the case of trimming this sheet, you want that arrow to match the dip of the paper. So arrow here points up and down, so my paper dips up and down here. All right. Now since we're going to trim this 4 sheets the same way, I'm going to grab my dark blue here and do my grain check on this one. Now this paper, the texture of it, it's got a laid finish. It's much heavier. It's just different, but I can still feel that dip wanting to go in this way. Another way to check is just push against it. Like this is really hard to push in. This is much easier. So again, I want it dipping top to bottom. Now I'll stack the papers neatly together. I'm using my favorite trimmer here. We do carry them at Club Scrap if you need something. I know a lot of you say you have a lot of trimmers, but maybe you don't love any of them. I love this trimmer. I've been using it for years. Okay, so before I cut on this style of trimmer, a couple of important things, making sure that the paper is resting against the ridge up top here. And when I look for the number 10, I want to cut this at 10 inches, make sure you're looking at the inches and not the centimeters. Sometimes first timers, if it's been a while since you've measured, you're like, oh, there's the 10, and you line it up there, but that's only 10 centimeters. Make sure you're working at the inches down over here. Now, once you find that whole number, the third thing is to stabilize firmly on this bar, especially with 2 sheets of paper in the trimmer base. Don't mess with sliding around, and then you won't have a nice straight cut. That's extra important when we're card making. Okay, after that first cut at 10, we're going to slide now down to 5 inches. Notice I just let the paper that fell here is still laying there. And I'm going to slide the same sheet down without rotating and find 5 inches. Notice I stabilized once again. So important. Now take the 5-inch piece and rotate it, and we'll trim at 7.5. There we go, 7.5. The piece we just made here is going to need to be scored. So I'm going to set that aside out of the way in a separate pile. And then we have this like rectangle. I'm going to set this over here in a little pile. Normally I file things, but that's just not needed on this particular card structure. Okay. Now we have another 5x12. Pick that one up. And we're going to cut at 11 3/4. It's a little bit of a weird measurement. Such a big number to create such a tiny piece. It's intentional, okay? So 11 3/4. By the way, every vertical line on this trimmer is 1/4 inch. A lot of you already know that, but just to cover that. So 11 3/4 is here almost to the 12. Then go all the way down to 4 1/4. 4 1/4 right there. So that's 4 plus 1 column to the left. Now rotate this piece that's in the base so it's horizontal and trim at 4 3/4. I know, just weird things. So this piece also is going to go over on that pile to the left, and you'll see that this one nests perfectly onto the one that we made previously. So there you go. I've got 2 little piles here. And now this other, well, you got some scraps. Yeah, those 2. Those are a tolerable scrap. And here we have 2 more pieces. They actually match the size of the other pieces we set aside to be scored. So all 4 of those get scored. Take that 2 by 12 that's left over. We are going to trim that horizontally at 9 1/4. The larger piece is going to go to a bonus card if we want. And then these other little pieces are used. We'll just set those aside in their own little pile. And then these I'm definitely going to pop into the circular file, okay? We get to do all of that one more time with our light blue. So and if you're working with stuff of your own, just take 4 sheets of paper in 4 different colors that coordinate. Checking the grain direction, I want it dipping easily from the top of the trimmer to the bottom. Stack neatly, and our first number once again is at 10. Stabilize. And then slide to 5. These heavier papers, if you don't stabilize, they move when the blade comes down. But if you stabilize, they don't move. That's good. It's a good thing. Rotate and trim at 7 1/2. And then this piece goes to be scored. And then this makes that larger panel, and it'll match those other panels, you know, the same size here. And then I'll take the remaining 5 by 12, and remember we have to do the 11 3/4 inch. So that's that little scrap maker. And then go all the way down to 4 1/4. Rotate so it's horizontal, and trim at 4 3/4. And that makes the nesting panel again. So the slightly smaller panels, this gets set aside to be scored with the others, just like it. And then you have these 4 little 1/4 inch scraps. Take that 2 by 12 now that's left over here, and we will trim that horizontally at 9 1/4. This larger piece goes into a scrap pile or bonus card pile. And then again, these can join their friends in that other little separate pile. That's it for that pattern. Now we're moving on to paper E, I call it. So that was A, B, C, and D. Those are 4 different colors. Then E is a 5th color, and it's a darker color for matting purposes, okay? Here we go. And I carefully planned out every last cut to make all this work just like a puzzle. Our first number here is 10 3/4. 10 3/4. Stabilize. This 2 is a nice heavy stock. Then 9 1/2. 4 3/4. So notice how I trim and move, trim and move, trim and move. 4 3/4. Next, take the 2 pieces you just created. They should be the same size, and stack them neatly together. Rotate them so they're horizontal, and we have a series of cuts we'll make with them stacked together at the same time. Okay, you don't have to do them at the same time. It's just, to me, this is more efficient. And you're maximizing this trimmer workhorse here, so make sure, again, you stabilize. I'm looking for 11 1/2, 10 1/4, 9. Wow, some little pieces here. 6 3/4. That's a little bit bigger. 4 1/2. 2 1/4. Gosh, that's just all kinds of pieces. Let's kind of collect this and organize it. So you've got a bunch of panels. They're the same width, okay? Those are 2 1/4 inches. I'm gonna set those in their own little pile. Then I have a bunch of other pieces. These are 1 1/4 inches. They get a pile. And then you have these 2 really skinny ones. That's a scrap, okay? Set those aside. Now, 2 more strips have fallen off the end. They should be the same size. And I'll trim them at the same time. So I can stack them neatly and go at 9 1/2 on this. and 4 3/4. Okay, so now I have these 4 additional pieces and they match these other skinny panels, and you're going to get these 2 little guys that fell off the end. So as you can see, a lot of strategic planning went into those cuts, and now we're done with our plain papers and we can move on to our our cut aparts. So with our cut aparts, they're printed on a big commercial machine and trimmed with a commercial trimmer. And I didn't like the accuracy of that commercial trimmer because sometimes the paper would slip a little bit. So we have to do that very last step of trimming away the outside edges to make them perfect. So that little hash mark that's right in there, I'm going to line that up with the edge of my blade, maybe a little shy of the mark, and then I'll show you what I mean. So I'm just cutting about that far and then rotate. This time when I make the cut, I can see the edge of my silver blade. I'm not sure if you can see where my hand is here. I can see that edge, and that way I can better align that hash mark both at the top and bottom corner of my trimmer. Then rotate. Once again, line up your hash marks. Rotate. This time I'm going to look over here on my left at the 12, and that lines up with the hash mark over here, and then that finishing slice. And what I love is that it just takes off a nice little hair, right? And I've got my little scraps that fell off the end, and my cut apart is now exactly 12 inches like I want it. And I can follow my numbers now. So I'm gonna start out making sure that the little jeeps are on the right edge of this sheet. And our first cut will be at 11.5. Then slide to 9 and 4.5. Rotate so that this sentiment is here on the right. We'll cut at 10. And now don't let this bother you. We're going to cut right through this image, okay? And it's facing upside down. That's by design. It's fine. Then go to 8. 7. It's very important you follow along with me here. 7. 3. And 2. Now I'm going to pick up these pieces that fell and just kind of keep them in the order that they were in. You're going to have medium, skinny, wide, skinny, medium. Okay. And then you've got so much road, so little time. That's a separate thing. So I got some little piles here. I'll just keep track of those. Now I'm going to take this next strip, making sure that the orange panel is on the right, and I'll cut at 10. 3 and 2. Okay, same thing. We're just kind of tuck all these pieces, put them on my piles. Now I have these little sentiments, making sure have a wonderful day filled with fun is on your right. I'll cut at 10.25, 8.5, 5.5, and 2. So these are going to end up being sentiments for my card, and then like this is kind of a bonus image here, as is the little trucks. I'll keep a little pile for that, and we get to do everything one more time. Yay! All right, same thing here. I'm going to cut shy of my crosshairs and then rotate. Now I can see better top and bottom for alignment with the edge of the blade. Rotate again, line up my crosshairs or my registration marks, whatever you want to call them. Now I can look at the 12 over here, and again the 12. Okay, with the jeeps on the right, our cut again is at 11.5. 9. 4.5. Rotate. This is on the right. You'll cut at 10, 8, 7, 3, 2. Pick up the pieces. That goes in here somewhere. And then again, your sentiments can stay separate. It's kind of up to you how you want to organize that. We'll go again on this one with the orange on the right. 10, 8, 7, 3. That's the weird one. And 2. Okay, gathering up again. Trying to maintain that order, or you don't even have to reassemble it later. And you can get rid of that guy. And now our strip here, we have 10 1/4, 8 1/2, 5 1/2, and 2. This is kind of, again, a bonus image and sentiments for the outsides of the cards. You got your Jeep border for your bonus. Next, I'm going to get rid of my trimmer and replace it with my Score Pal. So if you're an avid card maker and you don't have something like this, I highly recommend the Score Pal. It does a great job of putting a nice, solid score line onto your cards and projects so that they fold really beautifully. Now, since we have some accordion action happening with these cards, I'm going to have you do some flipping while we score so that we can pave the way for the best possible result. Now, remember, each one of these is the same size. It's going to be 5 by 7 1/2, and we're always going to be scoring horizontally, or like the horizon or the long way. I rarely use the plastic tool that came with the Score Pal. I usually use a metal tipped stylus with the round ball on the top, and that tends to do a pretty good job engaging with these lines, the ridges on the Score Pal. Each of these is scored at the same exact way, so once you get the hang of it, it's pretty easy. I'm going to score at 2 1/2 here. So 2 1/2, engage and push firmly, especially for heavier papers like this craft cover weight. So again, that was at 2 1/2. Now I'm going to flip the paper from the bottom to the top. Notice I didn't rotate anything. I just flipped bottom up to the top and score at 4 and 6 1/2. Ta-da! That's it. Okay, here we go. Now we have an assembly line here. 2 1/2, flip bottom to top. 4, 6 1/2. We get to do that again and again. 2 1/2, flip, 4, 6 1/2. 2 1/2, flip, 4, 6 1/2. Notice I am holding my tool like a pencil. 2 1/2, flip, 4, 6 1/2. Wish I could tell you how many cards I made while I was figuring out these measurements. 2 1/2, flip, 4, 6 1/2, 2 1/2, flip, 4, 6 1/2. And our last one, 2 1/2, flip, 4, 6 1/2. Okay, that's it for our scoring. So now we have all of our scored pieces, all of our other mess of prepped pieces. We're going to organize these into one of 4 piles, and each pile will be everything you need to make a card. Okay, so I'm going to begin with finding the orange scored pieces, and there's going to be 2 of them. That'll be the base of our first card. Then our second one, we'll make it dark blue. The third one, I'll make it a light blue. So I'm just matching up the colors, and the last one, we'll make it craft. Now I'm going to reach for these dark brown panels. This was paper E, right? And we have all these panels. I'm going to take 2 panels for each card. See how I dealt those out just like a deck of cards, right? Then we have the skinny brown panels, same thing. That was paper E. And I always just suggested a dark color for matting on these, but it's up to you what you use if you're, grabbing from your own stash. Next, remember we had the paper, it was the largest of the 2 panels, because I showed you earlier that they nest. So I have these 2 piles, the larger one, and then the one that nests on it. So we're gonna go with the larger. I believe the measurement here is gonna be, if you wanna confirm, 5 by 4 1/2. So I'm going to match the base color of the card when I distribute these panels. So I'm going to stick with the orange, the dark blue, the light blue, and the craft. You don't have to do it that way. It's just how I did it. You can distribute these papers however you like. Okay, so now here's a little trick that I use when I'm distributing color. So do you see how my last card was craft? I'm gonna put the craft color then up on my first card. This was orange, so I'll move the orange over to this card. This was dark blue will go there, and this was light blue, so I'm gonna put the light blue panel here. And if I'm distributing color, that's kind of how it works. Now I also have these smaller panels as well. Let's put a dark blue here, a light blue, a craft, and an orange. That way we're getting closer to having all the colors represented on these cards. And then remember, we have all of this stuff, all of these weirdly cut images. This brown image, so we've got, I'm going to put this onto the dark blue card base. It just happens to be on the top. Make sure you get all of those. That was like the brown, orange, dark blue. And then we have one of these brighter mountain ranges, 2, 3, 4, 5 pieces there. This one, this light blue card base is going to get the brown. So again, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And this is going to have that brighter blue, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, getting there. Now we've got our sentiments. Now these, I'm telling you, are bonus. So those are going to be for bonus cards if we want. But I've got a year of new terrain ahead, combined with life is a journey, fill your tank with joy. On this blue card, I'm going to use mountains of wishes with have a wonderful day filled with fun adventures. And again, I'll do my little shape here. Year of new terrain ahead with life is a journey. Mountains of wishes with have a wonderful day. These are bonus images. Again, they would have been scraps, but my designer, Jacqueline Carney, who's very, very talented, she'll always just fill those extra areas with art. And that way, if you wanted to, you can take these excess cut aparts and turn them into bonus cards. Again, that's totally up to you. Okay, that's a lot of prep work. But now everything is done, and all we have to do now is just enjoy the assembly process. What I like to do is let's just take all of this craft card base pile and put it into one of the envelopes that's prepped and ready to go here. We've included those envelopes right in your kit so that you can send your cards right away upon completion. And I'm just going to load the parts and pieces into each envelope. We do this every month. Like when we have our card making kits, every month that we release as part of our club, we do the same thing. We make a total of 12 cards in those workshops, actually. But I do in the video 1 card because the remaining 3 assemble in the same way. So that's the process, and that's what we're replicating here with this fun card as well. Okay, so I think it's time to talk about the card structure, and that involves these 2 scored pieces. Now, whenever we have a score line, that's going to lead the way for how that fold is performed. So a score line has an indentation and it has a bump, right? And remember we did all that flipping earlier when we were scoring. So I'm going to take, this is the indentation and this is the bump. I want the bump of the score line to be on the inside of the fold. So here we go. It's easy as that. Now here is a bump, and I want that to be on the inside of the fold. And here's a bump, so I'm going to fold it that way. And you can see it made this sort of weird pleat thing. Very, very strange. Then you remember you have the second piece, right? So I'm going to do it the same way. I'm looking for the bumps. So here's one. I'll fold it to bury the bump. And here's another bump, fold that. And then fold back. So again, it gives me that same pleat, that same exact look. And what's so nice about when we're paying attention to what we're doing at the Score Pal, it makes all of the other assemblies so much easier. Basically, do you see how kind of these wings of the card are being formed? It just, that whole scoring process accomplished exactly what needed to be done in order to create this base card structure. Now here we have all these other little parts and pieces. I'm going to look for that larger orange piece, okay? It's the panel. And when it's attached to our card, it's going to be the exact same height. So if it's not the same height, you'll need to rotate it so it's exactly 5 inches tall, okay? Now, this first piece is probably the hardest thing to install. And it's going to end up being added to these 2 tabs in the center of this shape, right? This is the center of your eagle wings. And it's going to sit on top of both of those pieces. Now, the best way to attach this, though, is 1 wing at a time. Here's how I do it, and you can do it the way you choose. You can use your preferred adhesive. I'm using my ATG ATG tape here. And there's going to be a little bit of a gutter. If I were to make this panel go right up to that fold line, it doesn't function like I want it to. So I created a 1/4 of an inch gutter. So from this fold to the left edge of this panel, I want it to be a 1/4 of an inch. So to find that, I just take my grid ruler, and the first solid line on my ruler is a 1/4 of an inch. So I'm going to line up that 1/4 inch line. My ruler is positioned 1/4 of an inch away. Now notice how my ruler is vertical. Like a lot of you measure like this way, right? Okay, this is from here to here is a 1/4 of an inch. But I like to use that line, that's a 1/4 of an inch from the edge, so that it's level and perfect on my first shot. So now all I have to do is rest my panel onto that ruler's edge, line up top and bottom, and stick it down. So now this central part is now attached to the wing flap, and it's exactly where I want it to be. Okay. The next easiest thing is just to flip it over, and now I can apply adhesive to this tab here and turn it over. And now I'm just going to line it all up with my first wing, just right there. Just butt it right up against it. And because this is the easiest way to see, right? So when you flip it back over again, now that panel is beautifully attached to the card base, okay? Both of those little flaps attached. It doesn't look like much yet, does it? We need a little bit of zhuzh, right? So next I'll take this panel, and all of the mathematical process of calculating the perfect size panels has been done for you, which is the cool thing about our little method here at Club Scrap. Then we have our nesting panels. So when you're doing assembly line style card making, it's really nice just to line them up, and you can put all your adhesive on at once, depending on how much you like. I just like a dab on the edges and then maybe something in the middle. So this obviously nests onto the widest panel. Then you have this middle area here, that's going to be the skinnier mat size. And then from the left edge, same thing. So I'll put that larger panel and then the skinnier panel. Sweet. Okay. Next up, we have some artwork to work with, okay? So here we go. There is our larger central panel. I'll attach that. If you wanted to add ribbon or other embellishments, you might want to plan ahead for some of that. And let's just make sure we have our pieces of the puzzle forming correctly. So complete the image. That looks right, doesn't it? Okay, so now again, I'm going to be a little more cautious with this and do one panel at a time, just to make sure I don't lose track of where each piece goes. And I love how, again, mathematically, it just computes. It just works, right? So great. And far left over here. Wonderful. We have a couple of pieces remaining. Grab some scissors, and I'm not going to ask much of you for this fussy cut process. I'm just going along this outer line of this really cute little shape here. I don't really know what the name of this shape is. Is it a teardrop shape? A geomap shape? I don't know. Okay, so there we got this going on, right? And we also have the Life is a Journey, Fill Your Tank with Joy. If I nest this, the little piece we trimmed off the end of that strip perfectly fits, and this is all planned out for you, okay? Now, I need to attach this to the front of my card, and I like to do it so it's kind of winging out a little bit past, but you can't go past this fold here, okay? So I want it to be right about here. When you're gluing something to a card that you don't want it to, you have a special area, you don't want any adhesive on the back of this, only on the back of this part. So what I do is I place it, and then I just flip it right where it's going to live, and now I can see the seam of the edge of this panel, and I don't want my glue to go past the seam. Have that made sense? So it can still be sticking out here. My adhesive won't permanently attach that panel. So let me show you how this closes. Do you see how these gusset in? And now this finished size from end to end is 7 inches by 5 inches, and that's designed to perfectly fit the envelope, okay? So when I open this back up again, I've got this really fun shape, and I'm going to use the foam adhesive circles that came in your kit. And I think I have about a dozen of them included here. And the way I use them is take my scissors and I cut the foam adhesive circle in half right through the tab. So I have a tab on each piece. Okay, then you can go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's pretty good. So then all I have to do is get these little tabs peeled off, and I can attach this. I'm going to have it nesting. Do you see how it fits right into that little slanted area of the sentiment? And I love the thickness of these foam adhesive circles because it's not going to obstruct the mailing process for this card in any way. So again, you just pull in and gusset, and it lays flat, and it soars like an eagle when it's on display. I absolutely love this structure, and to see how that card is complete. So you'll slide this into the envelope, and you're good to go. So in full disclosure, I'm back a full day later filming again to finish up this workshop for you. And while I wasn't sleeping last night, I came up with maybe another way to show you how to attach the wings of the card to that pop-up panel. So I'm going to make one more card with you, and this one's going to be easier because we've already done it. So this is a great review as well. Now remember, when you are folding along those score lines, you're always going to bury the bump of the score line inside the fold. And that again makes that clever little gusset. Now this is one of the wings, right? I'm going to do the same thing on the second panel. And you can see I'm just kind of finger pressing these. I'm not burnishing them with a bone folder or anything. So basically when I did that, I made the left wing and the right wing of my little eagle. Now, as we've already learned, these get attached to a panel that's the same height as the base. And when I originally showed you how to do this, I suggested that you attach this to one tab at a time, and it's a 1/4 of an inch from the left edge of this valley fold here. But I have another kind of idea I want to try. So let's just take this panel now, again, making sure that it's 5 inches tall. Let's just get that. 5 inches tall, not this way. This is horizontal. I want to place vertically 5 inches tall. Then again, I'm using the 0 center on my grid ruler. So you can see from 0 to 8 over here. And then if I turn it around, I've got the number 4 on this side, the 0 in the middle, and then the 4 on this side. So I'm going to put this down so that when it's resting against the bottom edge of my panel, that the measurement is the same on both the left and the right. And now I see that maybe it would be better if there was some contrast here. So again, I just have the envelope here. So here we go. The reading here on the left side of my ruler says 2 1/4, and this says 2 1/4. And now I know where my 0 is, okay? Next, I'm gonna take this wing, and you see how I have this one tab folded over? This shorter tab, I think it's just 1 inch. I'm gonna apply adhesive to that tab. Okay, so here it is, your geography, there's my adhesive. Turn it over, and I'm going to make sure that the edge of this tab is at the 0. And place it there. Okay, then I'm gonna grab the second wing. Here's my tab. Put the glue on the top of the tab while it's folded over. Flip it and butt it up next to the first wing you attached. That should have the same effect. And yes, indeed, it's nicely centered on my card base. All that's left to do then is to add your contrasting and nesting panels to the front. So the orange goes in the middle. And we've got, remember we have the brown panels, and I had a nice quick way of adhering these. I always just line them up, right? Line them up and do all the adhering at once. It's kind of a quick and easy way to do it. There's not as much contrast here on this dark blue card base. That's what happens when you use these 4 different paper colors. Some are going to look different than others. And then again, this is a different image. Of course, we have the larger panel going in the center panel of the card. And then I believe what I've done in the past with this too is just went ahead and added the rest of the adhesive required for the printed panels. So I know this one goes on the right edge. I just love this image. This is Arches National Park. So if you've got your outdoors lover, that's who you're going to want to send this card to. And while I'm finishing this up, I'll fussy cut this image with scissors. You could also use your craft knife and cutting mat for these straight lines if you would prefer. But I want to invite you to join our card club. So every month we design a card kit. It has 12 by 12 papers, embellishments, and cut aparts, kind of like this, so you don't have to stamp if you don't want to. You can, but you don't have to. And we trim those papers kind of like what we did with this set. Now here we're making 4 cards, but in our club we make 12 cards every month, and the kit includes envelopes and embellishments too, which is kind of fun. And it just makes it easy to finish up those cards, learn something new, create every month. And you can do it right along with me during our workshop. So I do offer a workshop just like this every month. We'll make 1 card sample together of each style, and then you can make the rest on your own, kind of like what you would do here on those remaining cards in the set. So here I'm taking my handy little tabs from those foam adhesive circles. And once again, placing my little badge here on the card. It's fantastic. I love it. Again, the envelopes that still have the pieces in it will make your remaining light blue card and the craft card. So once you're finished with this, you will have 4 completed cards with the option of a bonus card. Let me talk about that for just a moment. So if you've known me for any length of time, you know that I'm not a big fan of having a lot of scraps left over. You can have them, of course, but I realized there's quite a bit here. So what I just want to show you that I did, so I took all those elements and I just grabbed 2 white card bases. I figured most of you have access to something like this in your stash. They're just trimmed to 5.5 by 8.5 and scored. And incidentally, I paid attention to the grain direction before I trimmed the paper so that it would fold easily in that direction. And you can see that I incorporated the little car border nested with some of the blue strip there, and then a craft colored base here on this one with the orange graphic and the circular image and the sentiment on the inside. And of course I was able to make 2 exactly the same here, except this is with the blue strip. So again, I'm utilizing all of the scraps available to me to make more usable content with as little waste as possible. Another thing that's really cool is once you pick up our instructions, you have something you can recycle again and again, which really helps us use our stash. I know it becomes problematic for some of you to have this big stash. Simply grab 5 sheets of plain paper. You got A, B, C, and D trimmed like this, and then a contrasting dark color or maybe a white. You follow that pattern. And then instead of using the printed cut apart like we included in the craft along kit, you would use a print, for example, or maybe a stamped scene. Use your stamps if you like. So here is an example of this Soaring Eagle card featuring Club Scrap's typeset collection. And you can see I've got the print going on in the background and elements from a cut apart sheet to create the sentiments. Same with this. And again, you can use your stamps as well. I just, sometimes I feel a little lazy and I want to use my prints in a beautiful way. So that's with the typeset collection. And then most recently, Club Scrap released a kit called the Riverbend, and I made a sympathy card from the Riverbend cut aparts sharing in your sorrow. This is for the loss of a pet, which I think is really neat. And look at how beautiful this is. So I made 2 of those Pet Sympathy Soaring Eagle cards. How perfect, right? And then I made 2 birthday cards. Again, reassembling the scene printed on the sheet in the background and spread across the entire card base. And here we've got a cool fishing scene here. So that's just a peek of all the possibilities you have with the Soaring Eagle card formula. So again, I just want to give you one more invitation to consider a membership to our Club Scrap Card Club, where you'll actually make 12 cards instead of just the 4. You'll have the 12 envelopes, all the embellishments, everything you need to finish them up. And then we get to hang out for about an hour or so while we do that prep. And I know a lot of people think initially, wow, that's a lot of trimming. I don't know. I don't feel very confident. And just a word of encouragement. The more you do it this way, the more you'll enjoy it. I've had people write in to me and say, at first I thought it was a lot of trimming, but now I am obsessed. Like, I love making cards this way, and any other way just seems really backwards to me. We've done all of that homework, all the calculations to make it as easy for you as possible. That's our goal. We want to make card making easy and efficient and fun. And it's kind of like putting a puzzle together. I find a lot of joy in it myself when I can even follow my own instructions to make a set of cards. A membership to Club Scrap, our card club, and our page kit for that matter, is just $24.95 a month. Really can't beat it, especially if you visited the card store lately and to buy a card for a friend and you're like, whoa, this is $8. I could have made it for that or less, way less. So just consider that. Give us a try at Club Scrap. We've been doing this for 24 years now, and we'd love to welcome you as a part of our family. Oh, and I want to thank Brian and Carol once again for hosting us today. We really appreciate them and putting these events together. It's a lot of work, and we appreciate it so much. It's just a great way to reach people with our unique approach to card making. And again, I hope you'll join us soon. I look forward to seeing you next time.